I did a poll to my audience and it says over 75% of my audience is not ranked Grandmaster or above. We're gonna change that right now with this get out of low elo guide, going over every rank and giving you tips and tricks along the way so that you can quickly climb to Grandmaster and beyond. But before we begin, I have a massive problem. The Marvel Rivals Coaching Academy doesn't have enough low elo players anymore because everyone has ranked up to Grandmaster, Celestial, or even Eternity. We've seen so much dramatic improvement that it's literally hard to fill out the low elo classes. And if you want to improve quickly, the Academy is a surefire way to do so, and the first 30 days are absolutely free. So definitely check out Academy and Coaching in the links down below, but let's get right into the video. Now, the first ranks we're going to talk about is Bronze and Silver. I'm going to combine them because they are just the Wild West of Marvel Rivals. And really in Bronze and Silver, there is not a lot of team-oriented play. The characters that are picked are completely random. There's a lot of nonsense that happens, to be honest, and it's very deathmatchy in the way that it plays out. And what this really means is that you should be aiming to have high kills and low deaths most of all. Like, all your other stats can loosely matter, but really you are trying to win the game through the opponent being in the spawn room way more than you are. That's how you're gonna win games more often than not. And another aspect of this is that you're gonna be gaining a lot more rank than you lose if you have consistent high performance stats and just performance bonuses. Because when you're in the lower elos in Bronze and Silver, that's when your performance percentage is at its highest. So you want the highest amount of stats. You want to be aiming to try to get MVPs or SVPs as much as possible, because even if you're going like 50-50 or even less in Bronze and Silver, if you're MVPing all the games that you're winning and SVPing all the games that you're losing, you're gonna be gaining like plus 30 and losing like 10. Another important aspect of this is to play for value as far as those kills and not to enable. Like, if you're playing, as an example, Rocket, and the entire game you're just pocketing your tanks, there's no guarantee that those tanks will do anything with that infinite amount of enabling. Like, you are enabling your tanks to take space and be aggressive, but will they take space? Will they be aggressive? Who knows? And if you're locking Rocket expecting your team to be able to do those things, you're just gonna be stuck. And I think a lot of players get stuck in Bronze and Silver and some of these ranks because they are constantly trying to enable players instead of being proactive and doing things themselves. Now, I'm not telling everyone to just lock Bucky and run it down. You can play supports and you can play tanks, but you need to be deliberate in how you're fighting enemies and getting value, aka kills, in most situations. Like, there's gonna be supports that are better. Mantis is gonna be a lot better because you can run it down and kill people than Rocket is, because he's gonna be overly passive most of the time, and he plays more so the fundamental game of Rivals that players are just not interested in playing down in Bronze and Silver. So you're gonna make it a lot harder on yourself. Same thing with a character like Magneto. Yeah, you can run it down and get kills on Magneto, but you're gonna have a much easier time doing that on a character like Thor, where you don't really care what your team is doing. You don't care about enabling your team. You don't really care about creating space in a traditional sense. You're creating space by running at somebody and killing them and then doing it again and again, right? High kills, low deaths, playing to get value individually. This is what it's all about in Bronze and Silver. And this is doubled down by the fact that performance matters a ton here. And I really want to emphasize this. You should be the least amount of flexible as possible in Bronze and Silver. Do not flex for your team if it means putting up average stat lines so you get average performance boost whether you win or lose. This is not the way to climb out of Bronze and Silver, I promise you. Also, in general, try not to lock AFK heroes or passive value. Make sure that your character is getting value by being proactive. Those are going to be the best characters to climb with out of Bronze and Silver. Now, here are some really actionable things you can do to guaranteed climb you out of Bronze and Silver. Number one, small hero pool. Lock the heroes that you want to play and keep it a small pool so you get a lot of repetitions mechanically on those characters. You want to practice the mechanics. I would not recommend more than 3 heroes if you're in Bronze and Silver at all. And I don't care about what your team comp is, like, at all. I don't care if you have 4 DPS, lock another one. I don't care if you have 5 tanks. I don't care. Just lock the character you want to play and do your best within your team every single time. Number 2 is focus on mechanics. This is comfortability with your kit, because here's the reality and the hard truth about just this game in general. Players that have good, even average mechanics in other games like Apex and Overwatch can come to Marvel Rivals and with their mechanics alone quickly climb up to at least Plat. And what that tells you is that your mechanical skill is most likely lacking. You need to be practicing your mechanics. You need to be going into the training room downstairs and practicing against bots. You need to make sure that your settings are optimized, whether you're on console or PC. Mechanical skill matters. Mechanical comfortability matters. You need to grind this. Like, if you do grind this, this will guaranteed get you results back. So this is the second actionable thing. And the third is FPS fundamentals. This is something that I see a lot of players that get stuck in bronze and silver don't have a lot of the core FPS fundamentals around their gameplay that they need to in order to climb. So number 1, play cover. If you're playing in the open and you start taking damage, you should not have to use an ability or spend 5 seconds walking to a piece of cover. If you can do something from one place, find a place that gets you really close to a wall, a corner, a piece of cover. So if the enemy ults, if you get knocked down to 1 HP, you can quickly go behind that cover. If you're playing in the open, what you're doing is you're constantly demanding resources from your team in order for you to not die. And that is a huge mistake, and it makes it so that in your inherent play, just walking around, trying to do damage and play the game, you are so much more resource dependent, and you make it so much harder on the rest of your team just doing what you normally do, playing how you normally play. And the real problem with this is that you could be playing like this and making it really hard for your team to win games, but you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. So that could be really bad and hinder your development more than anything else. Now, we do got to talk about the nonsense that happens in bronze and silver. There are going to be a lot of leavers, and I'm not going to lie, you have to power through that. Like, there are just going to be people that randomly leave games, and it's going to be frustrating. If you play enough games and you just have high performance, it doesn't matter. You will climb out of here. There will be way less leavers once you get out of silver. Number 2, Smurfs. This is another frustrating one. We are getting placements very soon, or depending on when you see this, we already have placements, which will deter Smurfs, but it won't eliminate them. When you go up against a Smurf, I want you to try your best. I want you to analyze how you're dying up against them, and then just kind of take the loss on the chin and then move on. You're not going to be able to beat really, really good Smurfs if they're tryharding fully, but that's okay. This is just small drops in the overwhelmingly large bucket of your individual performance, your play, and your games that don't have levers and don't have Smurfs. So if you could power through those things, you will climb. I guarantee it. But now we've ranked up past the nonsense and we've made it to gold, which is shiny, but it's almost like a shiny pile of shit, because that's what it feels like with all these like toxic teammates and like really, really crazy egos in gold. Now, at least games will feel more real now. You'll have actual proper team fights. Everyone's kind of doing their role, although you're still getting a lot of like DPS locking and like random comps that don't quite make sense. But at least people are trying to play the game, like actually play the game. Now, individual performance is still at a premium. Like, you're still getting a high boost for performing well as an individual. So the number 1 actionable tip is to stop dying useless deaths. Like, if you're gonna die, you need to make sure that every death makes sense to die. Here's what I mean by that. If you die on defense and you don't run to the cart and stop it on like a payload map, and then you die when the cart has moved up like 10 meters or whatever, and you die late, then you're creating a situation where you didn't stop the cart, so it's going to be really hard for y'all to get another fight, and your teammates are honestly going to come back and just trickle in, and you're creating that because you didn't die with your team. So by the time you get back, your team might be dead again, and then there's just like this vicious staggering, and you could get mad, but really you could also be the cause. So on defense, if you're gonna die with your team or live. This is like very, very important. Get out and live so you can regroup and be patient for your team to come back, or legitimately just die. Number 2 is don't risk your death when your team is dead. I see this a lot where players will be alive, they'll like get out, or maybe their team is dead and they're kind of regrouping, and they play too far forward. They're poking, they're prodding, they're trying to make a play or something, and they risk their death, and then they end up dying right when their team gets back, and now it's just a vicious stagger cycle all over again. You need to not die these useless deaths. I see it so often in gold. It's one of the biggest reasons gold players can't climb, because they don't respect their life enough. If you have the lowest deaths on both teams every single game in gold, I promise you'll climb out of gold so quickly, but it's so hard for players to do. Now, the second thing is create a game plan versus support ults. Support ults are really strong, and you need to have a game plan up against them. And this is true for support players as well. Depending on what you have in your kit, you need to have a plan. So the first thing you need to ask is, can I interact with this support ult? Can I do something about it? Can I kill through it? Can I make a play through it? If the answer is no, you need to back up, give space, and live. You need to live. You need to just leave. Don't keep fighting in the ult. Don't stand your ground. Don't contest the objective. Back up and live. That's the most important thing. And if you can kill through, then of course try. You have to have the capability to kill through. But if you don't, then you just got to back up and live. And then if you're a support, you want to mirror later. And what I mean by this is, if their Luna pops an ult and you're Luna, you want to pop your ult too most of the time, but only if your team is about to die as a result. So, like, if their Luna pops ult and starts walking into your team, their whole team walks into your team, you want to wait as long as possible before you pop your ult before your team die, right? And the idea here is that the last person to ult has the advantage. So if their Luna ult is going to last 10 seconds, if you ult right away, then both of y'all's ult ends at the same time. But if they ult and then y'all back up, you wait, your tank takes a little damage, then you pop ult, and you waited 4 seconds into her ult, that means that your ult is going to last 4 seconds after her ult, which, I'm not going to lie, most of the time in gold, the Luna player and the entire team pushing so aggressively that they find themselves out of position when your ultimate is still up and their ultimate is down, and you're going to get kills because of that. Super strong and something to think about as a support player. Now, right now, there's a couple of characters that I think are worth learning in gold because they are the bedrock for just playing the game in the future. Really important to start to grind and learn now, at least somewhat. And the first one is Doctor Strange, because every single player needs to know how to TP back to point. And sometimes you're stuck on Strange for the whole fight, and you need to know how to TP back to point on Strange, do a good TP, and then live, and then potentially even pull off an ult play. So you need to know how to play Strange, basically. I don't care if you're a freaking Rocket player. You need to learn how to play Strange. Everyone needs to learn how to play Strange. Number 2, Wolverine, I think, is a great character for everyone to learn because he's really easy to pick up. He's not too mechanically difficult. And he's really good at countering some really frustrating strategies and heroes that you could run into, like Triple Tank or Groot or whoever. And pretty much everyone should be able to play Wolf at like a bare bones level. Plus, he's a great character to hop out of a TP as, because you get that overshield, which is like an extra bit of powerful passives in that last fight. You know, when you pop through TP, you only get one fight anyways, so that passive is extra valuable. That's why I think Wolverine's so good. And then the third thing I think everyone should learn is one main support. Just one. If you're like a DPS main, you can learn like Strange and one main support as some of your flex characters, and that's all you need. But one main support, and I mean a support that can heal a bulk amount. So Luna, Invis, Cloak, or Rocket. Pretty much you should learn one of these 4 to just add to your hero pool. If you just want to learn the bare minimum, and you don't really want any expertise, Rocket is going to be the easiest because he just doesn't require a lot of offensive capabilities. But I think that if you have great aim, someone like Luna makes a lot more sense for you to just pick up and learn and play that character when you can't play DPS for whatever reason. So this is my recommendation of heroes to learn. You don't have to learn them all, but I do think it's really important to help you be a better type of player in the future. Now, the other bit of advice I'll give you is to find the weak link on the enemy team. So when you are playing certain characters, you're going to have matchup strengths, certain advantages. Like if you're Bucky, you have really strong advantages against like Black Panther or Magic. Knowing which character you have a massive matchup strength against, and then knowing what player on the enemy team is not performing well or is incapable of outplaying that matchup strength. So you find the person, you find like, oh, okay, they're on Iron Man and I'm on Hela, and I have an advantage in this matchup. And that Iron Man is not, he's not capable of outplaying me. And so I'm just going to farm him all game. Until he swaps, I'm farming him the entire game. That's kind of the idea, is that you find both mismatches in strength, in the matchup and in player skill. It's kind of funny. I've been watching the NBA and it's very similar where you're doing the exact same thing. You're finding that weak link and you're exploiting it over and over again. This could be a super easy route into winning games, and there's a lot of times that you'll run into someone in gold that just is not very good at their second best hero. So if they swap off, they lose, or they're stubborn and they never swap off and they lose. So yeah. Now, there is nonsense at gold in a very similar way to silver and bronze. There are going to be Spider-Man players that are going 1 in 10. That's frustrating, but the thing I'll tell you is that makes it easier for you to individually perform better. And I want you, even in games that you're going to lose, still aim to play well the entire game. Aim for valuable ults, aim for valuable plays. You still want SVP. You still want good performances, even in games that are unwinnable, because you're going to lose far less, even in gold. So yes, it's frustrating, but I would much rather lose 10 for a game that I had an Intic Spider-Man in than lose 20. Take that as your victory and move on to the next game after you avoid that freaking bastard. But number 2 is Smurfs. There's still going to be Smurfs. Same advice I gave you in the bronze and silver. You just have to kind of power through that. Analyze what they're doing. Take notes. Take whatever you can from that matchup, that experience, but then just kind of just roll through it and go to the next one. And then keep in mind in gold, there is going to be a lot of variance, and that's just normal. But if you do these things, if you constantly think about what I've talked about, you will climb, you will improve, I promise. Then number 3, we finally made it to the platinum rank, and we have entered what I like to call mock meta. So the games in Plat will try to emulate higher ELOs, but there'll be extra amounts of variance and then the lack of ability to fully execute that. So players in Plat are likely to play meta heroes. They're likely to try to play meta comps. There is going to be some amount of that, but there are also going to be one tricks, trolls, and then people playing things but not knowing why it's good, right? They're like, oh, Hella's meta, I'm locking Hella, but they can't aim at all, so it's not really like that good, right? They think it's good because higher ranked people do it and pros do it, but they can't accurately emulate it because they don't have the individual skill. That's why it's called a mock meta. Now, at the end of the day, what actually matters is winning team fights. That's what matters. Winning entire team fights, because when you win team fights, you cap the point, or you stop the cart, or you push it forward. Winning team fights is what matters the most. And the number one thing I want you to start working on when you're in Plat is tracking the numbers alive and dead on both sides. I've been doing a lot of VOD reviews on my channel lately, and there are players that don't really know when their team is winning a fight. This is one of the most important things you got to learn how to do. Watch always. Keep an eye on the top right corner because you always need to know how many people are alive on your team versus the opponents. When one person dies on them, you're like, okay, we're up. We can play a little more aggressive. Another person dies on your team. Okay, we're in a state of passivity. We're in a state of equilibrium. Oh, one person dies on our team. What does that mean? We have to back up. Knowing this is super important. And when I do a lot of VOD reviews, I find players pushing when they should be backing up when they should be pushing, or doing nothing when there's a massive advantage that they have in a team fight. The way you kind of need to be looking at the top right is kind of like old school, us old unks when we played Halo 2 and Halo 3. Well, we always kept one eye on the radar. Like, you always keep one eye on the radar. It's the same thing. You always keep one eye in the top right because you always need to know what team has the advantage because it changes how you play. Because this leads me to the next thing, is that a lot of people will waste ults in a lost fight. Supports do this a lot, of course, where they have 3 people dead and they still want to pop their ults. Or DPS, Buckies will really try to like 1v6 an entire enemy team. You gotta understand that ultimates can kind of bridge the gap between numbers advantage, right? If you're at 4 people and they have 6, you could use an ult or 2 and kind of make up that gap in people. But it's only going to go so far, and the larger that gap is, the harder the ultimate's going to have to work, right? Like, obviously, a solo Luna popping ult is not going to be able to win against 6 people, but maybe 3 people versus 5, and you use 2 ults, one of them being a Luna ult, that can win. So you have to be really, really careful here, because when you try to bridge that gap, it makes the ult need to do more. And you don't have any guarantees with a lot of ultimates. Like, is the Buckio going to get anybody? Is the Mago going to kill somebody? Is the Panther going to be able to get a kill with his ult? You don't know that. But what I will tell you is that it's a lot easier to create advantages in an even fight than it is to try to overcome a disadvantage in a numbers disadvantage. So An example here is if you're 3v3, popping an ult can give you the advantage to win that fight fairly easily. But once again, if you're like 1v3, you have to make up for the numbers disadvantage and then still win the 1v1 in the clutch. So that's just something to think about. Most of the time, you want to just, you know, take the loss in the fight, reset, come back with your team when you're fully alive, and then pop your ult right then and there to start off the next fight instead of trying to turn a losing fight. Unless you have guarantees, ult combos, or there's not a massive amount of people dead on your side. There's just like, you have like maybe 5v6 or 4v6. That's okay. Anything larger than that, you got to really think about it because you could waste that ult. Now, in a lost fight, of course, you could just run to the car and die on it, depending on the situation. But most of the time, past that, you want to either live or you want to try to trade. This is really, really important. Trading is very strong and something that's underrated. In a situation where there's no way y'all win this fight, just beeline straight for one of their supports and just try to trade with them. Kill that person, then you die. The reason that you're doing this is because you either die fast, you get to go back with your team, that's cool, or you kill that Luna. And the reason that killing that Luna could be really valuable is because she's not there perfectly when y'all start fighting again, like she just showed up, or she wasn't around to heal up her team so she doesn't get ult charge. So it's really strong, and if you have opportunities to do this, go for it, and unless you can live, which is typically going to be better. Now, the next thing that you need to start doing in Plat is tracking ults. What ultimates specifically can you do something about? That's what you need to track. You don't need to track every single ult, just the ones that you can do something about. Can you stop them? Can you kill through them? Is there something you could do? Like if you're Phoenix, you better be tracking that rocket ult. That's the most important ult for you to track. And if you're not tracking it, then you're really just kind of autopiloting through the game. It's super important. If you're a Magneto, you need to be tracking Iron Man. You need to be tracking Star-Lord. You need to be tracking Punisher. Like the things that you could do something about, you need to be tracking. And then if there are ultimates that can deny what you want to do, you should try to be tracking those as well. So if you're Psylocke and they have a Luna, maybe you can't do anything about that. You can't kill through the Luna ult, but you can track the Luna ult so that you know she has it, so that you know, okay, I need to bait it out with my ultimate, or I need to bait it out to clear the way for my ultimate. You see how it changes the entire game because it gives you a plan, like an actual plan of action. There's a lot of players in Plat that just autopilot. They're not really thinking about winning team fights. They're not really thinking about tracking ults. But if you do these things, this is what will get you to the next level. And it's super important to do because as Psy, if I have ult and I know the Luna has ult because I'm thinking about it and she hasn't used it, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to play an aggressive off angle. I'm going to poke her. We're going to call her. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to dive her 3-2-1. We go after her. She pops her ult. We back up. We wait. I go hide. I go set up. I get a health pack, whatever. As soon as her ult's over, I dive in. I ult. I kill the entire enemy team. That's a game plan, and that's something you can actually execute if you think about these things. So if you want to get past this rank, you got to start thinking about the game more deeply and start tracking these specific ults. Now, there are some characters that I like to call deny or defeat. I did talk about this concept in the counters video, but it's basically characters that if you cannot deny their value, you will lose to them. Characters like Black Panther, characters like Human Torch, characters like Penny Parker. These are characters that if you don't come up with a solution, then you'll lose the game. And this means you might be getting farmed by Black Panther. Play a support that is easier to survive against him. You might be, playing, a random dive DPS, but you need to swap to Bucky or something that can shut down the Black Panther. And the idea here is that if you can deny that one character's value, you'll probably easily win the game. But if you can't, you lose the game on the spot. It's like a litmus test for can you win this game? Depends on if you can shut down Black Panther. Because we've all had those games where a Black Panther goes like 30-5 and just rolls through your entire team. But that same Black Panther has died 3 times in a row and swapped off. I promise you. And it really depends on if you can adapt to deal with him. That's what matters. You got to consider it like this is the skill check boss that you have to answer. And you got to have a game plan to answer a lot of these characters in your hero pool. Think about it. If there's any character that you ever struggle with, think about something you can add to your hero pool that helps you deny some of these characters. Now, of course, I want you to overperform every single game. If there's a game where everything looks like it's going really wrong, and especially if you're filling, swap to your best character. type in chat if you have to, or just say on the comms, I'm swapping, I need to swap to this. Like, you cannot just slowly lose a game when you're just playing something just to fill. Like, if you're filling to Rocket and your DPS or 0-3, 0-4, your tank is lost and you're slowly losing that game, I need you to swap to something that actually gives you a chance of winning. You just have to. Like, you gotta find a way. I don't care if the team composition looks terrible. You gotta make sure that you at least get a chance to carry that game, and you're not gonna do it by playing a passive character that you don't normally play. And I see this often where I'm coaching players where they're like an insane Psylocke player, that every time they play Psylocke, they MVP or ace or do some amazing stuff, and then they just went through 5 games where they played like Luna, Mag, then Rocket, and just like all these characters that they don't play because no one selected these characters, you know, at the beginning of the game, and they just lost all these games because they're filling over and over and over again. What's the point of filling if you're gonna lose over and over again? I'm not saying never fill, but don't give your team infinite chances to prove that they're gonna do something. If you've already like lost for a long time, you gotta swap and just make it happen, make it work. Now, there is some nonsense in Plat. There is a lot of nonsense. I think number one is ego. There's a lot of players with really high ego in Plat, and the best I could say is just to mute these players, ignore them. There's a lot of players that think that they are, you know, 1 win away from becoming a pro in Plat, and it's very hard because I think that this mentality can hold you back more than anything else. It's going to prevent improvement. If you're always thinking you're the best, how are you going to look inward? How are you going to, you know, try to figure out what you're doing right and wrong? Just completely drop the ego. I'm telling you, it's not even worth having the ego in Eternity, much less Plat. Number 2 is Smurfs. There's still going to be a lot of Smurfs in Plat, unfortunately, but they're not completely unbeatable. You just have to really analyze what they're doing and try to find a way. And keep in mind that if you can shut down some of these Smurfs, then it's going to make you better and better in the long run. There's going to be a lot of one tricks, unfortunate, frustrating. But if you can shut down a one trick, then that could be an easy route to victory. And Plat is honestly the Wild West, one of the hardest ranks to get out of, even if you're good. So you just got to kind of put in the reps and grind through it, to be honest with you. Now, last but certainly not least, we are in Diamond, and Diamond's not really even low elo anymore. Plat, arguably so, but, you know, we are in the mid elo, or like just before higher elo. So we've gotten here, and this is good. We're in the higher percentage of players, but if you reach this rank, I really don't want you to settle, because you have done a lot in Rivals, and you're a lot better than many players, but I don't think most players would consider you great at Marvel Rivals yet. You're close, but you're not quite there. And I will say that the higher and higher in elo that you get, the more and more fun that Rivals becomes as it starts to emulate pro play more and more. So you're doing yourself a disservice putting the game down here. You grind it through all the filth, and some of the actual good games I think are just beyond Diamond. So what can we do to get past Diamond? Now, the first thing you need to understand is that there's a ton of mistakes that players are making all over the place. And as you get from Diamond to Grandmaster Celestial, a common theme you'll see is that the plays aren't bad, and there are plays that a Diamond player can make that like a Celestial player is also making. It's just the amount of mistakes in a game. You know, like a top 500 player might be making like 2 to 3 major mistakes in a game. Go all the way down to Grandmaster, and it might be like 10 or 15. Diamond players are making like 20 to 30 mistakes, pretty massive mistakes in a game. So it's really kind of trying to cut those out and eliminate them. Now, the first thing that I want you to think about a lot in Diamond, though, is that ultimates are what decides whether you win or lose. Like, the game is very ultimate focused. So having a game plan for your ultimates is really, really important, and trying to get consistent value out of all your ultimates. I think it's something that can hold a lot of players back, where most of their game is good, but when they use ults, it's always countered by a support ult, or they die in the process, or they don't get any value, or like half of their ultimates, they get like 2 kills, and the other half of their ultimates, they do nothing with it. You need to try to level that out and get consistent value with every ult. Then the next piece of advice I'll give you is that combos and synergies are really, really powerful and important if you want to climb. These are OP via win rate. Like, having good synergy combos is just by the numbers, very, very strong. And if you are going to duo, which I actually recommend in Diamond a lot, you have to synergize your synergies, your combos, and your play. Otherwise, it's better for you to just solo most of the time. Like, if one of you is Strange and the other one of you is like a BP main, I think that's a really anti-synergistic duo, or just a duo that just doesn't do anything for each other at all. If one of you is Strange and one of you is Magic, oh, hey, you give Magic the amazing team up. Or if one of you is Magneto and one of you is Phoenix, oh, you have that cool combo synergy. One of you is Moon Knight, one of you is Groot, one of you is Mantis, and one of you is Black Widow. You see, the point here is you're double downing on these really powerful synergies. And then in addition to that, you're trying to make coordinated plays where y'all calm to each other and really try to isolate duels, create 2v1 opportunities, kill through defensive ults. There's a lot you can do with this, but you gotta be trying to fully squeeze the value out of the duo, because other people are gonna do that. And if you're duoing and then y'all are anti-synergistic, you're kind of just making the game harder on y'all without actually getting any of the benefit from it. Now, next up is versus meta. So the meta is going to start forming here. So, you know, players are going to start mocking the meta more, but players are actually playing reasonably close to the meta. They're playing a lot of what is played in the higher levels. But I want you to think a little deeper. Why is something played at a high level, and what can you do to kind of emulate it? Like, in what ways can you actually emulate it, and what ways can you not? Understand that there are certain things that work even in spite of the meta, because the skill to value ratio isn't the exact same at every single rank, and players aren't denying you in the same way that a higher player would. So as an example, I think BP is still extremely broken in Diamond because players don't know how to adequately counter him, even if the character really does fall off as players get better and better. So you got to learn what ways does the meta matter, or what it doesn't matter. Like, it sometimes matters and sometimes doesn't. When are those situations? Important for you to think about personally. Another thing is, you need to think about how your heroes line up versus the meta. Like, you can climb every single character to top 500. It doesn't matter what the character is, but what meta does define is how often you're going to run into heroes. How often are you going to run into Magneto, Emma, Psylocke? How often are you going to run into Hela, Luna? How often? And if you're up against these heroes often, you need to think about what your game plan is against these heroes. How are you planning to interact? How are you planning to shut them down? Because once again, if you're up against like a Psylocke in 20% of your games, having a good game plan, even if you're playing something untraditional like Squirrel Girl, how do I play the matchup? What do I do against the Psylocke? Do I play corners? Do I constantly kite away from her angles? What do I do? Having a game plan there is gonna give you more percentage points and win you more games. So you need to think about the meta even if you're not playing it and the players that you're up against are not perfectly engaged in the meta or emulating the meta, because if you do have a game plan, then you're gonna be even better against those players. Then the next thing, and I cannot emphasize this enough, mechanical excellence is super important. Now, this is going to be hero dependent because not every character is going to be, you know, as mechanically demanding. And, you know, if you're playing Groot, I don't really think you have to have amazing mechanics. You do need to know how to perfectly build a wall and a ramp in a moment's notice, but you don't need to like be like perfectly like point and click shooting. But on characters that demand that, you need to be practicing that. You need to be putting in the reps. You need to be putting in the aim labs. You need to be grinding. And the reason is because once you get to Grandmaster and then you're up against the Celestial players, then you're up against, you know, top 500 players or Eternity players, players do not miss easy shots. And another thing that's super important to understand is that if you make a good play with your game sense, you push a character that's 1 HP, they have no cooldowns, whatever. That's a good play on paper. Oh, yeah, you could push this person. But if you lose that, you're losing because you're not able to execute on that play. And that's what mechanics really is, your ability to execute on a play. At what percentage can you execute? If I'm Hela and I fly, I bird at a Bucky that has no cooldowns, what is my failure rate there? I have to hit maybe 2 body shots or 1 headshot to beat him. What's my failure rate? The higher his mechanical skill is, the less margin for error. Even if on paper the play is perfect, I still need to be able to execute. And there are a lot of players that are really smart game sense wise, but their mechanics are failing them. Good play, bad execution happens all the time, and it's because of your mechanics. So I really need you to focus on it. Now, the last bit of advice is just to try to minimize on the amount of fills that you play. And if you are going to be playing a character substantially, just actually commit to learning it. Like, if you're going to be playing Luna in like 20% of your games, because that's just the amount that you have to quote unquote fill, just learn how to actually play Luna. Don't allow those 20% of games for you to just autopilot and then just guaranteed lose those games. You want to have a positive win rate even on the characters that are not your best or your most optimal or your most favorited characters to play. So yeah, I would just say like filling as a whole concept should kind of be eliminated. Just have more diverse mains. If you're going to do that, if you're going to fill, quote unquote, just make them part of your actual hero pool. Now, if you follow all of this advice, you will 100% climb out of low elo. But if you need extra assistance, we've had so many people in the academy climb quickly to Grandmaster, Celestial, and even Eternity. So definitely check it out in the links down below. First 30 days are free. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Smash the like, subscribe if you enjoyed it. Let me know what video you want to see next to help you out. And I'll see you next time.